Don't come home, your sister doesn't want drama. My mom said 3 days before Thanksgiving. Hi, I'm Teddy Thatcher, 32, and 5 years ago, my mother called me 3 days before Thanksgiving and said 7 words that shattered everything I thought I knew about family. Don't come home this year. Victoria doesn't want drama. That was it. No explanation. No apology. Just exile. I was standing in my shoebox of a studio apartment in Boston, halfway through folding laundry and nursing a lukewarm pumpkin spice coffee. The scent had been my pathetic attempt to fake a holiday mood. I'd already bought my plane ticket home to Connecticut. Non-refundable, of course. I thought Mom was calling to confirm the time she'd pick me up. Maybe even ask if I wanted to bring dessert. Instead, she launched a wrecking ball through 27 years of being the easy kid. Drama? I remember saying, laughing at first, like it had to be a joke. I haven't even spoken to Victoria in months. Exactly. Mom said flatly. Let's keep it that way. She's pregnant again. She doesn't need the stress. The stress. That's what they called me now. I was 27. I hadn't missed a Thanksgiving since I was old enough to sit at the kids' table. And now I was being uninvited, not even by my sister but through my mother. Like I was the family's designated problem. I hadn't yelled, hadn't caused a scene, hadn't even RSVP'd late to her last baby shower. I just asked why I wasn't invited. Apparently, asking questions was my crime. That's when Mom said the line that would echo in my head for years. You always make everything about you. I stood there frozen, phone to my ear, watching snow start to fall outside the window. My chest tightened with that old familiar pressure. I knew this move. I'd seen it before. Every milestone I had? Overshadowed. Every time I tried to speak up. Shot down. Every time Victoria cried? The whole damn house stopped spinning to listen. Mom, I already bought my ticket, I said. Then get a refund. Click. That was the moment. Not when I was left out of the baby's shower. Not the birthday party that got cancelled because Victoria had a hangover. Not the college graduation they showed up late for because Victoria's cat had a vet appointment. No. It was that click. That silence. That understanding deep in my gut. I'd never been the favorite. I'd always been the backup plan. The acceptable sacrifice. But I wasn't going to cry about it this time. Not right then. I wasn't going to call friends to rant or bury myself in work to forget. No. I was going to make a new plan. If they didn't want me at their table, I'd find another one. Thanksgiving Day hit Boston like a silent punch, cold, gray, and strangely loud in its quiet. The kind of quiet where every sound echoes too hard. My upstairs neighbors were hosting. I could hear the dull thump of footsteps, muffled laughter, the smell of stuffing sneaking through my vents like a cruel joke. Every time a child squealed or someone clinked a glass, it scraped across my chest like a reminder. Not invited. Not included. Not wanted. I hadn't told anyone. Not even my best friend. What was I supposed to say? Hey, my mom banned me from Thanksgiving because my pregnant sister might get stressed by my existence. I opened Instagram. Mistake. First photo. Victoria, glowing and smug, holding a wine glass filled with apple cider, other hand on her baby bump like it was the next Messiah. My parents were in the background of the picture, mid-laughter. The caption read, "So grateful for family today. These are the people who matter most." 5 chairs at the table. No empty seat. Not even a symbolic one. I stared at it for a long time. Longer than I should have. My thumb hovered over the screen like it wanted to break through and shake someone. Not out of rage. Just out of heartbreak. I closed the app, shoved on my coat, and left. No plan. Just the ache to not be in that apartment, not be alone, not feel like the only uninvited son in all of Boston. I wandered downtown for a bit, hands in my pockets, avoiding happy families like they were landmines. Every couple that passed by, arm in arm, felt like salt in the wound. I was seconds away from saying screw it and grabbing a slice of pizza from some sad, fluorescent dive when I spotted a warm glow down the street. The Harborview Grill. An old-school place. Leather booths. Candlelight. The kind of place you needed a reservation for, unless it was Thanksgiving and the world had temporarily gone quiet. The hostess gave me a look when I walked in, half sympathy, half curiosity. "Just one tonight?" she asked. I nodded, throat tight. She led me to the smallest table in the darkest corner, barely large enough for a plate and a glass of water. Your server will be right with you, she said, and then she was gone. I sat down and instantly regretted it. The table next to me was a massive family gathering. At least 10 people, maybe 12. 3 generations. There was a matriarch, gray hair, pearls, eyes like she didn't miss anything. Her husband had one of those deep belly laughs that filled the room. 2 adult sons, one with a wife and twin kids who kept dropping dinner rolls under the table and giggling like it was comedy gold. And then there was the younger guy. Maybe my age, maybe a little older, cracking jokes that had the whole table in stitches. It was obnoxious. It was beautiful. It was everything I didn't have. Their laughter made me feel like a ghost. Like I was watching a movie from the wrong side of the glass. I tried to eat. The food was fine. Fancy. But I couldn't taste it. I chewed and swallowed and smiled politely at the server while pretending I wasn't one strong drink away from falling apart. I must have been obvious. Because when the desserts came out, and I was still poking my way through stuffing like it was a science experiment, someone tapped my shoulder. "Sweetheart," a voice said, warm and direct. "No one should eat alone on Thanksgiving." I turned. It was the matriarch. She was looking at me the way no one had in a long time, like I mattered. "I'm fine," I said quickly. "Really?" Her eyebrow rose like she'd heard that 1,000 times. "You're a terrible liar. Come sit with us." "Oh no, I couldn't. I don't want to intrude." "You're not intruding," she said. "You'd be invited." Her husband leaned over. "You'll regret it if you say no." She never lets things go. The younger guy looked up from his plate, smile crooked. "Trust me. Save yourself. Just say yes." I stared at them. At the food still being passed around, the pie waiting to be sliced, the laughter still buzzing in the air. And then I nodded. "Okay," I said. And just like that, I got up and joined the table. Not knowing they were about to become the family I didn't know I was missing. They made space for me like I'd always been part of it. Someone scooted over. Someone else grabbed an extra chair. Before I could sit down, a plate was handed to me, piled high with food I hadn't ordered but somehow already wanted. A glass of wine materialized near my elbow. A fork was passed like a handshake. "Start with the sweet potatoes," the matriarch said. "You look like you need something soft and sweet." She had this voice, commanding but maternal, like she could shut down a boardroom or tuck you into bed with the same sentence. "I'm Eleanor," she said. "This is my husband Richard. That's our oldest son Daniel, his wife Sarah, their kids, and the handsome one trying not to look impressed is Marcus." Marcus gave me a mock salute. "Hi. I'm the family disappointment. Welcome. I'm Teddy," I said, still unsure how this was happening. "Thanks for this." "Don't thank us yet." Richard grinned. "We haven't forced you to sit through my jokes." "He has a tight 5. Marcus muttered. "None of it good." "I do not." "Okay, what did the turkey say to the computer?" Marcus groaned. "Google, Google, Google." The kids burst out laughing like it was the first joke they'd ever heard. It probably was. Daniel rolled his eyes, Sarah elbowed him, Eleanor smiled like this was exactly how life should be. And for a minute, I forgot everything. The cold apartment. The Instagram photo. My mother's voice saying, "Victoria doesn't want drama." I forgot all of it. I laughed. Not the fake kind I used on bad Zoom calls. A real laugh, the kind that comes from somewhere deep and involuntary. "That's the first time I've seen you smile all night," Eleanor said. "It's the first time I've meant it all night." We ate. And talked. And ate more. The kids showed me how to fold napkins into tiny hats. Richard argued with Daniel about gravy ratios. Marcus and I got into a surprisingly heated debate about whether Die Hard was a Christmas movie. Spoiler, it is. He disagrees. He's wrong. After the pie came out, and dear God, the pie, still warm, crust flaky enough to make grown men weep, Eleanor slid into the seat next to mine and dropped her voice low. "So what's your story, Teddy?" I froze. "What do you mean?" She gave me a look that said, "Please, don't insult me with lies." "No one eats alone on Thanksgiving unless they're running from something or got pushed out of something." I stared at my plate. "Bit of both." Eleanor waited. Not pressing. Just waiting. Like she had all the time in the world. "My mom told me not to come home this year," I said finally. "Said my sister doesn't want drama. She's pregnant again." "That's the reason?" she asked. Not judgmental. Just clarifying. I nodded. And you believe that was the reason? That's when something cracked. Not broke, just cracked. A small fracture of truth through the wall I'd built. No, I admitted. I know the reason. I've always been the problem they don't want to solve. The one they hope stays quiet. They say I'm dramatic, but really? I just ask why they treat me like I don't matter. Eleanor said, leaning back. So you're the truth teller in a family built on pretending. I blinked at her. Let me guess. She continued. When you call out unfairness, they say you're sensitive. When you ask to be included, you're making it about you. When you speak up, you're causing drama. And all they want is peace, right? Yes, I whispered. Exactly. I was a family lawyer for 30 years. Eleanor said. Trust me. I've seen this 1,000 times. And let me tell you something I tell every client who comes in thinking they're the problem. She leaned closer. Her voice dropped to a whisper. It's not you. It was never you. That's when I broke. Quietly. No sobbing. Just, my throat closed and my eyes stung and I couldn't look at her. She didn't say anything else. Just reached out and squeezed my hand. No pity. Just presence. The dinner wound down eventually. The kids fell asleep under the table. Daniel offered me leftovers. Marcus boxed up a second slice of pie. For emergencies. Richard wouldn't let me pay the bill. It's a tradition, he said. We buy dinner for the newest member of the table. Eleanor walked me out. Before I stepped into the night, she slipped something into my coat pocket. A card. Cream-colored. Minimal. Classy. Eleanor Morrison, J.D., retired. Family Law. Brookline, Massachusetts. 617 ***. Call me, she said. Not as a lawyer. As someone who gets it. I thank you, I said, awkward and overwhelmed. She smiled. You don't owe anyone your silence, Teddy. Not anymore. I walked home through the quiet streets, hands in my pockets, card in my coat, and something strange blooming in my chest. Not hope. Not yet. But the beginning of it. I didn't call her the next day. Or the next week. Or the week after that. The card sat on my desk like a dare. I kept telling myself it was weird to reach out. She was just being kind, right? Holiday sympathy. An impulse gesture from someone who probably didn't think I'd actually follow up. That family? They'd probably forgotten me the second I left the restaurant. But that wasn't true. Because 3 days into December, Eleanor called me. I let it go to voicemail. Teddy, it's Eleanor Morrison. Just checking in. No pressure. But if you ever want a hot meal and some company, we do Sunday dinners every week. Same place, same time. You're always welcome. I must have listened to that message a dozen times. Sunday came. I didn't go. I sat in my apartment in sweatpants, microwaving leftover pasta and telling myself I didn't want to intrude. Didn't want to be a charity case. Didn't want to walk into someone else's family tradition like a stray dog begging for scraps. But Sunday kept coming. And every week, Eleanor texted me a reminder. We're having roast chicken and mashed potatoes. 5 o'clock, come hungry. It's pot roast this week. Marcus is making the salad. Pray for us. Teddy, I made the good pie. Don't make me hunt you down. By the third Sunday in January, I cracked. I stood on the Morrisons' porch for 6 full minutes, debating if I should knock or run. The house was exactly what you'd expect from people like them. Victorian, wrap-around porch, candles in the windows, welcome mat that didn't feel ironic. There were voices inside, laughter, the occasional clink of dishes. I turned to leave. The door opened. There you are, Eleanor said, like I was late for dinner, not 2 months late for an invitation. She didn't wait for me to explain. She just pulled me into a hug that bypassed every defense I had and whispered, We saved you a seat. That was the first of many Sundays. Over the next few months, I became part of it. Richard taught me chess. I lost constantly. He gloated every time. Eleanor showed me how to make her pie crust. Don't ask for measurements, she said. I use witchcraft and instinct. Daniel's kids started calling me Uncle Teddy by accident and then never stopped. And Marcus? Well, Marcus and I became something else. At first it was just easy friendship. We text on memes and vent about work. He was an architect, hated office politics, loved buildings that told stories. We'd watch movies together and heckle the plot holes. There was never pressure, never expectation. But somewhere between March and May, the texting turned more frequent. The jokes turned more personal. And the silences between us? They stopped being awkward. They started feeling full. One Sunday in June, Eleanor leaned over during dessert and said, "If you two are going to keep pretending this is just friendship, we're all going to need acting lessons." Marcus choked on his wine. I nearly dropped my fork. The kids giggled. Richard raised an eyebrow like he'd been waiting for this moment for months. We didn't respond. Not out loud. But that night, walking me to my car, Marcus hesitated. "I know we joke a lot," he said. "But I'm not." I looked at him. Really looked at him. "I'm not either," I said. And that was it. No dramatic kiss. No swelling music. Just clarity. We were together. We'd been together long before we had the courage to admit it. That fall, we took a trip to Maine. Coastal Airbnb, bad cell service, endless seafood. One night, we sat on the porch watching the tide roll in, and I asked him what he remembered about that Thanksgiving. "You were eating mashed potatoes like they'd wronged you personally," he said. Eleanor elbowed me and said, "That boy needs pie and parenting." I laughed. "That's basically how this all started." "No," Marcus said. "It started before that. You looked around like you didn't think you belonged anywhere. And I thought, God, someone should tell him he does." He kissed me then. Slow. Certain. I hadn't known love could feel like being invited in. No hoops. No performance. Just a seat at the table. By the time our second anniversary rolled around, I was living with Marcus. I'd gone full-time at a design agency I actually liked. I hadn't spoken to my parents or sister in almost 2 years. And for the first time in my life, I didn't notice. Because I wasn't shrinking anymore. I was building. Building a home. Building a future. Building a life I hadn't thought I deserved. Until they showed me I did. It was a Sunday like any other: roast chicken, too much wine, Eleanor scolding Richard for cheating at chess, the kids arguing over who got to sit next to Uncle Teddy. But this time, Marcus and I had a secret. Well, not a secret, exactly. More like a plan. He asked me to take a walk with him after dinner. That was normal. We did that a lot. The neighborhood around the Morrisons' house was all tree-lined streets and warm porch lights, the kind of place that smelled like cut grass and quiet lives. We wandered a block or two, holding hands, stealing glances. Then he pulled something out of his jacket pocket. A small, square velvet box. And my heart stopped. Marcus didn't get on one knee. He didn't need to. He just held it out like it wasn't a question, but an answer we already knew. "Teddy Thatcher," he said softly, "I want to spend every holiday with you. Every Sunday. Every bad day, good day, boring Tuesday. I want to spend it all choosing you." I couldn't speak. I just nodded. And then I said yes. We told the Morrisons that night. Eleanor burst into tears immediately. Richard high-fived Marcus and said, "Finally. Thought I'd have to push you down the aisle myself." Daniel's kids demanded to be flower girl and ring bearer, even though one was 12 and the other didn't know what a ring bearer was. The planning began fast. Faster than I expected. Marcus wanted a summer wedding. Something outdoors, surrounded by wildflowers and good food and people who meant it when they said "we love you." And for the most part, that's what we got. Except for one problem. The invitations. Specifically, the line that said "parents of the grooms." For Marcus, it was easy. Richard and Eleanor Morrison. For me? I stared at that blank space for weeks. I hadn't spoken to my family in over 2 years. They hadn't called on my birthday. Hadn't checked on me when I posted about a minor surgery. Hadn't sent a single text when I got a new job and moved in with Marcus. Not even a like. Nothing. They didn't ask where I was. Because they didn't care where I was. And yet, they were still technically my parents. I brought it up one night with Eleanor while we were prepping dinner together. "I don't know what to do about the invitation," I said, chopping garlic more aggressively than necessary. "Legally, they're still my parents. But emotionally? Spiritually? Cosmically? They're not." Eleanor paused. Set down her wine glass. Then she said something that changed everything. "Teddy," she said slowly, "have you ever heard of adult adoption?" I blinked. "Like being adopted? At 32? It's more common than you think," she said. "Especially for people like you. People who've built a chosen family and want to make it official. It's not just about the name. It's about recognition. Permanence. Protection. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. She kept going, voice gentle. It's something we've thought about, actually. Richard and I. We've considered you our son for years. We just didn't know if you were ready. I turned toward her. You mean you'd actually want that? She looked at me like I'd just asked if the sky wanted to be blue. Teddy. We've always wanted that. My throat closed. I had to turn away and pretend to check the oven. We started the process the next week. It was surprisingly simple. Some paperwork. A few hearings. A judge who looked at us like we were the best case she'd seen all year. Eleanor handled most of it with the efficiency of a retired family lawyer who knew her stuff. Richard cried the day it was finalized. When I got the new birth certificate in the mail, I just stared at it for a long time. Teddy Morrison. It looked right. It felt earned. The wedding invitations were sent a week later. Parents of the grooms. Richard and Eleanor Morrison. No asterisk. No footnote. Just the truth. Of course, that's when everything exploded. Because no matter how quiet you try to be, some people just can't stand silence. It started with a text. From Victoria. No greeting. No context. Just, did you seriously get adopted? What the hell is wrong with you? I didn't respond. 3 hours later, my mom called. I didn't answer. Then she called again. And again. And again. 5 missed calls in a row. Finally, a voicemail. Teddy. It's your mother. Call me back immediately. What is all this about getting adopted? That's not funny. And don't think you can get married without inviting your own family. You're not that far gone. That's when I realized this wasn't confusion. It was control. They weren't hurt that they'd lost me. They were shocked that I'd stopped trying to come back. Marcus found me staring at my phone that night. You okay? I looked at him. Looked at the life we'd built. The home we shared. The family that showed up every Sunday. I think they're going to show up at the wedding. He didn't flinch. Then we'll be ready. And we were. God help them, we were. We hired security. Not because we expected a full-on wedding crash, but because I knew my mother. Knew the way she could twist grace into guilt with just a look. Knew how easily she could hijack a moment meant to be about joy and bend it into a drama starring her. We briefed the coordinator. Gave the security team a photo of my parents and Victoria. Made sure the guest list was tight, that no one could slip in under a +1. Eleanor called it a precaution. Richard called it insurance. Marcus called it common sense. The wedding was set for July. A vineyard in western Massachusetts, tucked between rolling hills and late summer wildflowers. We chose an outdoor ceremony at golden hour, followed by a candlelit reception in a stone barn that looked like something out of a fairy tale. Marcus handled the architecture nerd details. I obsessed over the playlist, the lighting, the signature cocktails. We were ready. Or at least, we thought we were. The morning of the wedding was perfect. Cloudless blue sky. Sunlight pouring across the vines. The florist arrived early. The photographer captured everything. Eleanor brought me coffee without saying a word and sat with me in the dressing room while I tried not to sweat through my tux. You okay? She asked, brushing lint off my lapel. I think so. You don't have to be. I nodded. I'm not worried about marrying Marcus. I'm worried about them. They don't get to take this from you, she said simply. They already took enough. I hugged her. Hard. The ceremony was flawless. Marcus looked unfairly good in his suit, like some kind of Pinterest husband dream made real. The guests cried during our vows. The officiant nailed the tone, emotional but funny. And when we kissed, the cheers echoed across the valley like something out of a movie. Then came the reception. And the moment. I was mid-laugh, holding Marcus's hand as we made our way toward the first dance, when our security guy appeared beside me. Mr. Morrison, he said quietly. There are 2 people at the front gate who say they're your parents. The woman insisted. Of course she did. Marcus turned to me. Do you want me to? No. I shook my head. I'll handle it. We walked to the entrance together. And there they were. Linda and Robert Thatcher. Standing outside the reception tent in outfits that clearly expected to be seated somewhere important. My mother wore a beige cocktail dress that practically screamed mother of the groom, even though she technically wasn't anyone's anything anymore. My father looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. They saw me and straightened. Teddy, my mother said, arms already opening like she expected a hug. I didn't move. You weren't invited, I said calmly. We're your family, she snapped, as if that meant something. This is your wedding. What did you expect us to do, not come? Yes, I said. That's exactly what I expected. You've made your point, she hissed. You got adopted. You changed your name. Congratulations. But this stunt? She gestured toward the reception tent. This is cruel. Cruel? I echoed. You told me not to come home for Thanksgiving because I might cause drama. You didn't speak to me for years. You erased me from your lives. You left us, she said. No, I said. I stopped chasing people who never wanted me to stay. That hit her. Her face crumpled for a split second before the mask snapped back on. Well, we're here now. So are you really going to humiliate us by turning us away in front of all these people? I paused. Because honestly, it would have been easier to just tell security to escort them out. To end the scene quickly. But something in me said, no. Let them see. Let them stay. Let them watch. Fine, I said. You can come in. My mother exhaled like she'd won something. But you're not sitting with family. You're not in photos. You're not giving speeches. You're not part of this. Her mouth opened to argue. I didn't let her. You chose distance years ago. Now you get to live in it. I turned to the guard. Seat them in the back. Marcus and I walked away before she could respond. Back inside, the music swelled. The MC took the mic and asked for everyone's attention. Before we continue with the celebration, he said, we'd like to take a moment to recognize two very important people. Without them, this day wouldn't be possible. I could see my mother perking up in the back, already preparing a gracious smile. Please welcome the parents of the grooms, Richard and Eleanor Morrison. The applause was instant. Deafening. Richard and Eleanor stood, beaming. People whistled. Someone shouted, Mom and Dad! From across the room. And in the back corner, my mother's face went pale. She turned to my father. Did he just? Robert nodded slowly. He did. The applause didn't stop. Because no one cared that two strangers were sitting awkwardly in the back. No one cared that they shared DNA with me. Because the only family that mattered tonight was the one that showed up, that stayed, that earned their seat. And as Marcus pulled me onto the dance floor, spinning me into the golden glow of string lights and clinking glasses, I realized something I should have known years ago. This wasn't revenge. This was reclamation. This was my life. They didn't leave. Not after the applause. Not after the first dance. Not after it became crystal clear to every guest in that barn that Linda and Robert Thatcher were strangers in a story that had already written them out. They stayed. Sat stiffly in the back, flinching every time someone clapped too loud or called Richard Dad. My mother's expression was carved from marble, pure endurance. My father just looked tired. Not regretful. Not sad. Just worn. Like the weight of all those silent years was finally catching up with him. And then, halfway through dinner, she made her move. I was getting air outside the barn, trying to slow my heart, and just be in the moment, when the door creaked open behind me. Teddy. I turned. Linda stood there, clutching her evening bag like it contained whatever remained of her pride. I'd like a word. I bet you would. She flinched, but recovered quickly. What is all this? She asked, gesturing vaguely toward the music, the joy, the people who were laughing inside without her. What are you trying to prove? That I don't need you anymore. I said honestly. That I never did. You can't just replace your family, Teddy. I took a breath. I didn't replace anyone. I chose the people who chose me back. Her lips pressed into a line. We didn't choose Victoria over you. You told me not to come home. That was one time. It was the last time. I corrected. And every time before that, you made it clear where I stood. Last. Always last. We were trying to keep the peace. By sacrificing me. She said nothing. I was 27, sitting alone at a Thanksgiving table while you all laughed without me. I continued. And I would have forgiven you for that. I would have forgiven all of it if just once, you had picked up the phone and said we were wrong. Come home. But you didn't. You never did. Her eyes welled. I didn't know what to say. You say I love you. You say I'm sorry. You say anything. Silence. Then Robert appeared behind her, hands shoved in his pockets, eyes fixed on the floor. Teddy, he said, and my name in his voice hit me harder than I expected. He sounded hoarse. Hesitant. I'm sorry. That froze me. Not because it wasn't enough, but because it came at all. I should have stood up for you, he said, voice shaking. All those years I knew what was happening. I saw how they treated you. I just didn't want to start a fight. I thought if I stayed quiet, it would all stay peaceful. He looked up, and I saw it. Shame. Real shame. The kind that curdled behind his eyes. I failed you, he said. And then, for the first time in my life, my father cried. I wanted to call, he whispered. After that Thanksgiving. After your birthday. After I saw the engagement post. I wanted to. But I didn't know if you'd even want to hear from me. I wanted to say something. Anything. But I didn't get the chance. Because Eleanor had stepped outside. She didn't interrupt. She just stood there, behind me, a calm presence radiating protection. Linda's eyes snapped to her. Oh, she said coldly. Of course. You. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. Me. This is your fault. Eleanor didn't blink. You mean loving your son? Welcoming him when you threw him away? He's my son. Eleanor didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. And yet you didn't call. You didn't show up. You didn't care until you saw what you'd lost. That's not love, Linda. That's possession. The door opened again, and Richard stepped out this time, calm as always but firm. I think it's time you both left. Linda turned on him. Who are you to tell us? I'm his father, Richard said, and his voice cut through the night like a bell. Legally. Emotionally. In every way that matters. We didn't give him up. You didn't have to, Richard said. You just never made space for him. So we did. Linda's voice dropped to a whisper. You stole our son. No, I said finally, stepping forward. You gave me away. You just didn't expect me to find someone better. I looked at them both, the people I'd spent half a lifetime trying to please. I'm not angry, I said. Not anymore. But I am done. Linda's face twisted. You'll regret this. I already regretted wasting 30 years on a family that didn't want me. I said. I don't regret finally choosing myself. Security stepped out from the barn, silent and waiting. Not threatening. Just ready. Please, Richard said, voice quiet. Don't ruin this any more than you already have. My parents looked at each other. Something passed between them. And then, without another word, they walked away. The doors closed behind them with the finality of a gavel. Eleanor stepped beside me, touched my arm. You okay? I nodded. But I wasn't just okay. I was free. The rest of the night shimmered. After my parents left, it was like the air got lighter. Like the whole room exhaled. The music felt louder, the laughter freer, the food even better. The tension that had knotted itself into my shoulders for most of my adult life, that quiet, aching what if, finally melted away. They were gone. And I was still standing. More than that, I was dancing. Marcus pulled me onto the floor and spun me under the lights like we were in some old movie where everything ends in joy. Our guests circled us, cheering. Richard and Eleanor slow danced in the corner. Daniel's kids tried to teach everyone the cha-cha slide. At one point, I caught Marcus wiping his eyes with the inside of his jacket sleeve. You okay? I whispered. He nodded. You chose me, he said. And they saw it. I kissed him. I've been choosing you since that first slice of pie. We cut the cake to thunderous applause. Eleanor had made it herself, 3 layers, vanilla bean with lemon curd and whipped cream frosting. She insisted on baking it even when we offered a caterer. You don't outsource love, she said. The first slice was perfect. The toasts were even better. Richard stood with a glass in his hand and cleared his throat. I always wanted a daughter, he said, then paused. Instead, I got another son. And I wouldn't trade that for anything. The room erupted. Then Eleanor stood, slow and steady. She raised her glass toward Marcus and me, then turned to the crowd. Family, she said, is not biology. It's not who shows up on a family tree. It's who shows up when you're crying into mashed potatoes on Thanksgiving and says, come join us. It's Sunday dinners. It's second chances. It's earned, not assumed. She turned to me, eyes glistening. Teddy was never too dramatic. Never too much. He was just asking to be loved properly. And when someone asks for love, the answer should be yes. Always yes. I didn't even try to hold back the tears. Neither did half the room. Later, as the party wound down and the barn twinkled with fairy lights and quiet music, Marcus and I stood on the wraparound porch of the little guest cottage where we'd spend our wedding night. He was in his shirt sleeves now, bow tie undone, hair a mess from hours of dancing. You did it, he said, voice low. We did, I replied. He turned serious. Do you think they'll reach out again? They will, I said. They won't understand this wasn't about revenge. That it was about peace. And if they do? He asked. I looked out at the vineyard. The stars. The full barn of people cleaning up and hugging and packing leftovers into mismatched Tupperware. Then I'll wish them well, I said. But I won't let them back in. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. He just pulled me close, forehead to forehead. You're mine now, he whispered. And I'm yours. I always was, I said. We stayed out there for a long time. Not talking. Just holding the night like it was something we never wanted to end. And it didn't, not really. Because that moment? That stillness? That was the start of the rest of our lives. The honeymoon was a blur of sun, salt water, and sleeping in. A little island off the coast of Portugal where no one knew our names and everyone smiled like life was one long vacation. We swam. We hiked. We ate our weight in grilled fish and custard tarts. We talked. About everything. The past. The future. What kind of house we wanted. If we'd get a dog. What kind? Marcus is Team Golden Retriever. I'm Team Mutt that looks like it knows your secrets. We talked about kids. Not. Should we? That part was already a yes, but when? How many? Whether we'd both cry at kindergarten graduation. Also yes. And then, on our last night there, Marcus turned to me over dinner and said something I didn't expect. I want our kid to have your last name. I blinked. You mean Morrison? He nodded. I want them to carry the name of the man who chose love over legacy. I didn't cry. I sobbed. Back home, life picked up speed in the best way. Our house, just outside Boston, quiet street, old trees, the kind of place where neighbors actually wave, started to feel like home. Not just a place we lived, but a place we belong. Sunday dinners never stopped. Eleanor insisted. Rain or shine, busy week or not, we showed up and there was always a seat. Always laughter. Always pie. One night, after dinner, I was drying dishes while Eleanor organized Tupperware like a battlefield general. Marcus was in the den, helping Richard fix a wobbly table leg. Have you thought about next steps? Eleanor asked casually, handing me a clean wine glass. Next steps like kids? She nodded, almost too casually. We've talked about it, I said. But I think we're finally ready to do more than talk. Eleanor paused, then turned to me with a smile that was all warmth and memory. I still remember the first time I saw you. Sitting alone at that little table, trying to pretend you were okay. You looked like a question mark in a room full of exclamation points. I laughed. That's about right. She reached out and touched my cheek, gentle and proud. Now look at you. Married. Happy. Whole. I nodded. I never thought I'd have this. You built it, she said firmly. From nothing. You didn't just survive, Teddy. You created something better. 6 months later, the test turned positive. Marcus cried first. I followed 2 seconds later. We didn't tell anyone until the second trimester. Not out of fear, just all. It felt too big, too precious to share too soon. But the night we told the Morrisons? Richard full-on shouted. Daniel lifted me off the ground. The kids cheered like I was announcing a new Star Wars movie. Eleanor sobbed into her apron and said, "Oh, my sweet boy is going to be a dad." The nursery became a joint project. Eleanor sewed the curtains. Richard built the crib. Marcus designed the mural on the wall, soft clouds, a sun peeking out, constellations scattered across a pale blue sky. The day we found out it was a girl, I walked around dazed for an hour. A daughter. I'd grown up trying to convince my parents I deserved their love. Now I'd get to show a child what unconditional love looked like from the very beginning. We named her Isla Grace Morrison. Isla, for the island where Marcus promised forever. Grace, for everything that saved me when I didn't know I needed saving. She was born on a rainy Tuesday, 2 weeks early, screaming her lungs out like she had something to prove. I cried the moment they put her in my arms. I'd always assumed I'd feel overwhelmed. Scared. Unsure. But all I felt was ready. The first Sunday we brought her to Eleanor and Richard's. They acted like royalty had arrived. Richard held her like she was made of gold. Eleanor whispered lullabies like they were spells. Marcus sat beside me on the couch, his hand over mine, both of us staring at this tiny, perfect human we had somehow made. I want her to grow up knowing she's enough, I whispered. From day one. She already does, Eleanor said from across the room, rocking Isla in her arms. Because she's yours. And you know now, you always were. We stayed late that night. Way past dessert. Way past the stories. We stayed because it felt like what you do when you finally have a home and a family and a future. And because no one, was kicking me out of this table ever again. A month after Isla was born, we had a naming day. Not a christening exactly, just a small backyard celebration with the people who mattered. The ones who'd shown up. The ones who stayed. Eleanor insisted on baking 3 pies. Richard rented chairs and strung up lights even though it was the middle of the day. Marcus stood barefoot in the grass, holding Isla against his chest while she slept, tiny fists curled against his shirt like she was hanging on for dear life. At one point, Daniel raised a toast. To Teddy, he said, holding up his glass, who somehow got both my parents and my little brother to stop being insufferable. And to Isla, who hit the jackpot. People clapped. I smiled awkwardly, because being seen still felt weird sometimes. But then I looked around and realized. This was the table. Not just the literal one, the folding table with mismatched chairs and Eleanor's best linen napkins, but the metaphorical one. The life table. The place I'd spent decades trying to be invited to. The one I'd twisted myself to fit, begged to be noticed at, cried over when there wasn't room. This was it. And it had my name carved into it now. Morrison. Not Thatcher. Later that night, after everyone left and the lights still glowed soft across the lawn, Marcus and I sat on the porch, Isla asleep in my arms, a blanket draped over both of us. She looks like you, he said softly. She has your stubborn mouth. I countered. She's perfect, he added. Yeah, I said. She is. We watched the stars come out, one by one. I thought about the past. About Thanksgiving alone. About that cold plate of turkey, and the family that never bothered to save me a seat. About the moment Eleanor stood beside me and said, no one should eat alone on this day. And I thought about how one invitation changed everything. Sometimes healing doesn't feel like fireworks or speeches or dramatic apologies. Sometimes it feels like a baby asleep in your arms. A partner beside you. A pie cooling on the counter. A Sunday dinner where no one has to earn their place. Sometimes healing just feels like peace. And I had it now. I wasn't going back. 5 years after that lonely Thanksgiving, I sat at the head of a full table, Isla in my lap, Marcus at my side, laughter echoing off the walls of the Morrison home. The same house where I'd first been handed a plate and a place and told, you matter here. Eleanor raised her glass. Teddy, she said, eyes shining. You turned one painful dinner into a life worth celebrating. I looked around, at Richard sneaking the last roll, at Daniel's kids arguing over pie, at Marcus feeding Isla mashed potatoes one finger at a time, and I felt it deep in my chest. Belonging. I'd stopped chasing love from people who withheld it. Stopped shrinking to fit a story I didn't write. Instead, I'd built something. Something real. Something mine. So here's my toast, to anyone who's been made to feel like the problem. You're not. You never were. You deserve a table where you're chosen. Fully. Freely. And I hope you find it. I did. I found home.